Podcasting isn't just about talking. It's about growing, engaging, and monetizing. And that's where Podcast One Pro comes in. Whether you're an independent creator or a major brand, Podcast One Pro gives you the tools you need to take your podcast to the next level. We're talking about premium hosting, advanced analytics, dynamic ad integration, and expert distribution, all designed to maximize your reach and revenue. Plus, with access to Podcast One's industry-leading network, you'll be connected to top-tier advertisers and a massive audience. It's time to go pro and turn your passion into profit. Visit podcastonePro.com to get started today. Podcast One Pro, the power behind the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 410 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Good, 410.
How about that?
I just wanted to say that.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
How you doing?
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. We had Carly Simon.
Hey, Carly.
Mo.
What's going on, Mo?
BJ Sir Earl.
Well, thanks, BJ.
Martin.
There's Martin.
Veronica Lopez.
Hey, thanks, Lopez.
Marcella Kinsella.
Marcella.
Stephen Hall.
Hey, Hall.
Amanda Foley.
What's going on, Amanda?
Melanie.
Good old Melanie.
Jens.
Jinza.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
Brandy Lewis.
What's going on, Lewis?
Lauren Johnson.
Hey, LJ.
And last but not least, Natalie Walker.
Well, thanks, Walker. As in Texas.
Ranger.
Yes.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Emma Harrington.
Hey, thanks, Emma.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support, the continued support. All that's amazing. We also had a PayPal donation from Danny Watt, who's getting married this weekend to his beautiful wife, Amanda.
So congratulations to you both.
Yeah. I think they're out in Scotland.
Oh, in Scotland?
Yeah. They wanted you to officiate, but I don't think your travel plans would allow.
Am I still barred from Scotland?
You are.
They really took my accent the wrong way.
Yeah, we've gotten quite a few emails about it from pretty high up sources within the government.
Yeah, we really did. I apologize. It just, maybe the apology didn't go over well when I continue to use the same accent.
Don't apologize in that accent. So, Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on True Crime All the Time where we're talking about the 1981 Swanson Motel murders. This case happened in North Dakota, and it's an interesting but obviously very sad case of a 53-year-old woman and her 7-year-old granddaughter being murdered. But also, this is a case that went cold for about 10 years until local law enforcement utilized an FBI profile to identify the killer.
Yeah, this case made me a little upset.
Yeah, me too. It's going to make the listeners upset, but I think it's a story that has to be told.
Absolutely, it does.
All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the Germond family murders on Thanksgiving Eve 1930. The entire Germond family was murdered on their farm in Stanfordville, New York. Nearly a century later, the murders remain unsolved.
1930. You remember that year?
Yeah. You were a flapper back then, weren't you? Just dancing the night away.
I set myself up.
You did. James Husted Germond was born in Stanfordville, a hamlet in the town of Stanford, New York, in 1884. His wife, Maybelle, was born in 1882 in Stanford. Houston and Mabel Germond had 2 children. Their daughter, Bernice, was born in 1912, and their son, Raymond, was born in 1920. The Germonds were dairy farmers. The Poughkeepsie Eagle News described them as not too wealthy, but comfortable. They had a modest farmhouse, a new radio, and they could afford all their necessities.
I wonder what a new radio would be like in today's world. What would be similar to that? Like, they're doing okay. They have a new,
I don't know, like whatever,
iPhone.
maybe, or the latest, greatest TV.
Yeah.
Most TVs are pretty inexpensive right now,
They
but
really
you
are.
still have your higher end, whatever OLED or OLED or however you say it. There's
yeah.
some TVs that cost more.
You got the OLE I2 9er Jackson 6er 89.
Sphincter ringworm.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be, but I guess something like that. The one thing that does strike me, when you're talking about the 1930s, what really are the necessities? And have they changed all that much? I think a lot of times today people would say necessities are, a cell phone, cable, internet.
Yeah.
Well, technically those are not necessities, I don't think, but we can't live without them.
No, we need those conveniences. You ever seen when somebody misplaces their cell phone
On a nightly basis, my wife.
and how they freak out trying to find it?
Mhm.
Because it's like the whole world is going to stop.
Because they can't see what's
Trending.
popping up.
Yeah.
And my wife even has the watch. And the watch has a feature where you can press a button and it alerts you as to where your phone is.
Yeah.
And she still can't find the phone.
Well, when when your wife was made, she was one of a kind.
There is no doubt about that. And you've been around her a lot, so you definitely would know. Houston was described as a quiet, mild-mannered man. He had a permanent limp due to a childhood accident. The rest of the family was just as quiet. They attended their local church in Stanfordville and had no known enemies. By 1930, 18-year-old Bernice was attending the Eastman Business College in Poughkeepsie. On November 26, 1930, the day before Thanksgiving, Bernice took a bus from Poughkeepsie to Stanfordville so she could spend the holiday with her family.
You ever been to Poughkeepsie?
I don't think I have. Have you?
No, I haven't. I've always wanted a sweatshirt from there that said Poughkeepsie, but then I realized they probably don't make them because it's too many letters.
They could make the font just smaller.
Yeah, it wouldn't look the same.
By all accounts, it seemed like a normal day for the family. Houston picked up a check from Borden where he made regular milk deliveries and he ran some errands. He stopped to buy feed for the farm animals and went to his brother Paul's farm around 4 p.m. One article by the Poughkeepsie Eagle News reports that Raymond was with him and they went to Paul's farm to grind grain. Houston returned home after that.
That's a lot of fun when you grind some grain.
Well, the other picture I'm really getting here is they got a lot of work to do.
They do.
We talk about people who own farms it is just nonstop work. And it's, I think in a lot of cases, not work you can just put off. You know what? I'll do that tomorrow. Well, no, the cows have to be milked.
They do.
Animals have to be fed.
Can't wait.
That grain has to be grinded, whatever that means. I have no idea.
Got to grind that grain. But I'm also thinking back in 1930, I'm not positive, but I feel pretty comfortable that they probably didn't have the machines that they do today that milk cows. So it was probably a pretty intense manual milking going on. And you like that little hand motion I did?
Yeah, you in conjunction with saying manual milking is something that's going to stay with me for quite some time.
Probably a little disturbing, I know.
It is. Around 5:20 p.m., Bernice got off the bus at her family's farm. She wished bus driver Dennis Haggerty a happy Thanksgiving and paused before she stepped off. She told Haggerty, "Looks like nobody's home. The house is dark." Bernice then got off the bus and Haggerty pulled away. As she was approaching the farmhouse, this was the last time Bernice was seen alive.
Kind of eerie.
It's very eerie. You have a young woman coming home from college to spend the holidays with her family. You get the sense that, she was a nice person. She was very pleasant, even telling the bus driver, "Have a happy Thanksgiving."
If you were watching this on a movie screen at that time, this is when you're yelling at the screen saying, "Get back on the bus. Get back on the bus.
Don't go in there. Don't go in there." On November 28th, 1930, the employees of the Borden Dairy Company were worried. Houston had missed 2 days of deliveries, which for him was highly unusual. There was concern when he missed his delivery on Thanksgiving Day, when he didn't show up again on the 28th. Borden employee Willard Coons went to the farm to check on him. Now, it's hard to think that you'd be working on Thanksgiving Day, but people need their milk.
They do.
Especially, I would think, on Thanksgiving Day. There's a lot of things to be prepared. A lot of those would take milk.
Mashed potatoes.
You're also going to be drinking milk, probably.
Yeah.
Coons arrived just after 9 a.m. No one was out in the farmyard. Coons got out of his car and started looking around, calling out and receiving no response. He saw Houston's truck on the property. When he entered the barn, he found one of the cows with a milker still attached to it.
So they did have some type of machine back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a machine or how automated it was. It did say it was a milker, though. The other cows were in distress because they needed to be milked. So what do you make from that description?
Well, clearly he was in the middle of milking a cow when something happened.
And whatever happened prevented him from getting to the rest of the cows. The door to the wagon shed was open, so Coon stepped inside and found the bodies of Houston, Germond, and 10-year-old Raymond. They were covered in blood from numerous stab wounds. Coons drove to Paul's farm to tell him what happened, then rushed back to Borden to alert the other employees. The sheriff was called, and Paul Germond, his father-in-law, and neighbor Arthur J. Curry went to the farm and entered the house before the police arrived. They found the bodies of Mabel and Bernice. In the kitchen, Mabel was on the floor near the stove, and Bernice was under the kitchen table. Both of them were stabbed to death. The coroner determined that the family suffered 23 stab wounds combined. Each victim was stabbed in the heart, and they all had defensive wounds. For example, Bernice had a cut on her hand, most likely from grabbing the knife.
Seems so personal.
It does seem personal. I'm also struck by this happening in the 1930s and what I'm sure was a relatively small town. Most people probably knew each other. I mean, this guy drives back to Borden's to let the employees know. But, you also have to think about Paul coming to the house and finding out that, his family is dead.
This scene gives me the vibe of that famous book that was written.
Oh, you mean that famous book?
That famous book by that
famous author?
Famous author.
Which is called, and you are, and this is pertaining to...
That one book. They made a nice movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, played the author, but I can't recall his name.
You talking about Truman Capote?
Truman Capote.
Okay.
Yeah, he wrote that.
In Cold Blood?
In Cold Blood.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me fill in the pieces for you. You started. Tell us absolutely nothing, and then let me fill in the pieces.
I know it.
No, I get what you're saying. That was the Clutter family, right?
Clutter family, yeah.
Authorities believe the Germonds were killed in the late afternoon, early evening of November 26th, sometime after Bernice got off the bus. Well, we know that has to be the case, right? Because you have the bus driver confirming that she got off the bus. She walked to the house. She told him happy Thanksgiving. She even said something about, doesn't look like anybody's home, right? The house is dark. One of the early theories was that the suspect had already killed the family and was lying in wait for Bernice. But it appeared she removed her hat and coat once she got home, which suggested the killer approached the house after she arrived. It was clear the family was interrupted. In the middle of a regular evening, Mabel had stored pies in the pantry, and she had chickens ready to cook in the cellar. The main theory was that the assailant knocked on the kitchen door, stabbed Mabel, stepped into the room, and attacked Bernice, who most likely dragged herself under the kitchen table. After leaving the house, he encountered Houston and Raymond, who were outside doing their evening chores, killed them, and dragged their bodies into the wagon shed. It's possible Houston heard Mabel and Bernice screaming and was running to their aid when he was attacked. The police believe Raymond might have tried to flee from the killer because his legs were covered with burrs from a nearby field.
To try to figure out how it all went down would be difficult, I think.
Yeah, well, let's face it, you don't have any Ring doorbell cameras, right? You don't have CCTV footage, anything like that to help put a timestamp on things. On the afternoon of November 28th, the sheriff found hoof prints showing the killer's potential escape route. The Germond's house faced the highway, and the police thought it was unusual that the suspect committed 2 murders in plain sight of the road and no one happened to pass by.
Did we mention that the suspect was a centaur?
Yeah, I mean, the way I read it, it almost made it sound like this man had hooves, but obviously the thought was that he fled on horseback. Robbery was considered a potential motive. Houston cashed his $150 check at the bank in town. He spent $50 on feed and was believed to have $100 on his person when he returned home. This money was nowhere to be found. All right, $100 is a lot of money in 1930.
Sure.
Also seems like $50 is a lot of money to spend on feed.
Got a lot of cows you got to feed.
However, DA John Schwartz said, as quoted by the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, "But I can't evolve in my own mind why a man would kill 4 persons for $100. I still believe the girl ties into this thing somewhere." So I get that, right? It's always hard for us to believe that somebody's going to kill 1, let alone 4 people for, some amount of money.
Right.
It does happen.
It sure does.
But I also understand this guy's way of thinking. Bernice is coming home. She hasn't been home. So could it be that she is the actual target, but there's no way that he's getting out of there without killing all of them, especially if he's known to the family?
So you're thinking, because this didn't happen before she got home, that the only thing that's really changed in this whole setup is that she's home now.
Yeah.
And this is the opportunity to do whatever.
I think you could make that argument.
Yeah.
2 years earlier, during the nearby highway construction, a number of laborers built shacks near the Germond farm. One of them insulted Bernice and was fired. When the family complained to the construction company, he threatened to get the family. The police sought this man as a potential suspect because he fit the theory that the killer was known by the family and murdered them to prevent identification. All right. I think at the very least, you got a person of interest there.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years seems like a long time to harbor all that.
And then strike.
Yeah.
2 years later. I mean, you also have to try to figure out, how does this person know that Bernice is going to be home? How's he going to know her schedule?
Right.
Returning home for college.
Or it's just a guess that, she'll probably be there since it's going to be Thanksgiving.
Yeah, possible. But I'm kind of with you. 2 years is a long time to wait to seek your revenge. reach, it seems like.
Unless it just got so much worse after that for this individual that he continues to go back to that day. Like, if it wasn't for that day, I would be this. But because of that day, I've lost everything, and I'm never going to stop until I make it right with this family.
Like that was the beginning of the spiral.
Yeah.
The coroner reviewed Bernice's correspondence to see if there could be someone with a vendetta against her. One letter berated her for failing to keep a date at a dance. Neighbor Arthur Curry, who was also a barber, told the police that he cut Bernice's hair several days before the murders and chided her about her boyfriends. She responded that she was going to Eastman now and had a boyfriend there she hoped to land. So I think now, we're getting into the area, still Bernice, right, as maybe the focal point of the attack, but it's maybe more related to someone who was in love with her, a jilted lover, or someone upset that she was dating someone at college.
And sadly, we know this happens.
Well, when you talk about the motives for murder, there are many, but money, relationship problems, right? Those are ones that crop up a lot.
Yeah.
2 suspects were questioned on the 28th, but were not held. One of them was a laborer named Sevy Lake, who worked as a farmhand for the Hollis family of Stanfordville. Police launched a search for him when they realized he fit the description of a man who left town soon after the murders.
You know what you don't want to be?
Somebody who leaves town right after the murders?
Absolutely.
Because we just talked about that in our True Crime All the Time case.
We did.
Dr. H.A. Richardson, one of the first to arrive at the crime scene, claimed he saw Lake walking on the highway near the Germond home on November 26th. Okay, so you have a doctor who's going to be a very respected person. I mean, police are going to take his testimony and regard it very highly.
Yeah, they're going to say he's an educated man. Clearly, we can trust what he says.
Lake's home was searched, but no evidence was found. However, Lake lied to investigators and appeared to be hiding something. Dr. Richardson soon admitted he was mistaken, and it was Thanksgiving morning when he saw Lake walking on the highway. Lake then admitted that he walked down the road past the house on Thanksgiving.
There's the good doctor ruining what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, the doctor made a mistake, but, the way I see it is he originally said that he saw this guy walking down the road the day before Thanksgiving. Then he came back and he said, no, it was Thanksgiving morning. And then Lake admits to the fact that he was walking down the road on Thanksgiving. To me, that's even more damning than walking past the house down the road the day before. The second suspect was Fred Whaley, another farmhand who was seen near the home on the night of the murders. The police believed he was being truthful when he said he was just passing by on his way to the gas station. Police also considered the possibility that William Nelson, an escaped inmate from the Mattawan State Hospital, was the killer. However, the superintendent of the asylum did not think he was violent enough to kill anyone.
I don't know if I could believe that the superintendent could have that right. I mean, it's his opinion, but I don't know.
Well, you know what they say about opinions.
What do they say?
Everyone has one. But, to me, Gibbs, I think if you have an escaped inmate from any type of facility, that person's got to be pretty high up on the list of someone you want to look at.
Yeah, they don't want to be caught, and they want to find a way to get away and hide. And, isn't that an opportunity at this farmhouse?
Well, and he's also at the state hospital. So why is he there? What's he suffering from?
Right.
Investigators were also seeking a man who left town on the evening of the murders. He was not from the U.S., and the men who gave him a ride said his name sounded like Florentino Chase to them. That sounds like one of your many aliases or stage names.
I have a few.
Chase, a man between 25 and 30 years old, was first seen in Stanfordville around 8 p.m. on November 26th, he entered a general store and told owner Oakley Robinson he was an employee of Borden's Creamery and received a telegram that his mother was dying and had to get to her. He purchased the soda and asked how he could get to Poughkeepsie and if any buses ran that time of night. He paced around the store and seemed to be in distress.
Well, if you just were notified that your mother was dying, you probably would seem distressed.
Yeah, you would. Now, if you had also just killed a group of four, a family of four, you might also be in distress.
Oh, yeah. And want to get that bus out of there.
And again, I think this is where, the timing or the timeline of the murders or the time of death would really come in to play. Bernice is last seen on the 26th. Were they killed that night? Were they killed the next day? We know that, the dad didn't make his deliveries on Thanksgiving Day. And he didn't show up to work on the day after that. So it's really most likely somewhere from after Bernice gets off the bus on the 26th to sometime on Thanksgiving Day, maybe even Thanksgiving morning, because I'm assuming he made his deliveries pretty early.
Yeah, I'm thinking, just as you are, if we knew the time of death, that would eliminate several suspects.
Yeah, because if it's before 8 p.m., okay, you got to look at this guy whose name may or may not be Florentino Chase. This being in distress, you might put that in a different light. If the murders are committed after that or into the next morning, well, then this doesn't mean as much.
Exactly.
Mr. Robinson told him he could get a man named Edward Wing to drive him to Poughkeepsie. Robinson called Wing and explained the situation. Wing was suspicious and called Borden and learned they didn't have an employee named Florentino Chase. Still, he agreed to take Chase to Poughkeepsie for $5. He brought a man named Floyd Youngins with him. All right, so he's like a early 1930s Uber. I will take you to Poughkeepsie for $5. Nowadays, you can't hardly even get a pizza delivered for $5.
I don't think you can get anything for delivery for $5.
Which is just down the street. During the drive, Chase said he was acquainted with some families in the neighborhood and said he once worked for a local gravel contractor. He said he knew another family and pointed out their house as he passed it. The two men believed Chase was lying about his identity. They eventually left their passenger at the New York Central Station. In Poughkeepsie, the police learned that Chase traveled to Beacon, New York, and the train conductor thought he seemed nervous. Now, again, if your mother is dying and you're trying to get to her, to see her before she does die, you're going to be anxious. You're going to be nervous.
And also maybe it depends on how the question is asked to this train conductor too. Hey, this guy rode your train. He's a suspect in a murder. Did he act weird, seem like anything was going on? Instead of, hey, what can you tell me about this guy? I understand maybe his mom was dying. How did he act on the train?
Or just how did he act on the train?
Yeah.
Without all the other things. I get you, though, because the minute someone would say, we're looking at this guy for the murder of 4 family members, okay, maybe you start to think, he was acting nervous.
Yeah, I remember now.
On November 29th, the taxi driver found a blood-stained butcher knife in plain sight near the Germond farm. Believed to be the murder weapon, authorities hoped to recover fingerprints from the knife. It was not owned by the family, and none of the neighbors said it was theirs. It appeared to be new, but investigators didn't find prints on the knife. They were able to trace it to where it was purchased, but this was a dead end because the shopkeeper couldn't identify who bought the knife. And here's where, the police are at a disadvantage, right? In 1930 compared to today,
Sure.
Most people today pay with credit cards, which obviously leave a digital footprint. There's also video surveillance, time stamping of purchases at a lot of stores. You didn't have any of that in the 1930s.
No.
People came in, they paid in cash, and that was it.
It's up to the clerk remembering what he sold that day and to who.
A week after the murders, Houston Germond's wallet was found in a culvert half a mile from the farm. It had no cash in it.
And we assume there was probably at least $100 in there.
Yeah, that's what authorities thought. Investigators quickly ran out of leads, but Florentino Chase remained a prime suspect. In 1931, he was arrested and held in the county jail for 55 days. At a June 1931 coroner's inquest, he was officially identified as Florentine Espiri Irimende, an immigrant from Spain. Witness Elaine Hevner, who knew him by the alias Bosco, testified that he was the mysterious stranger who left town on the night of the murders, but she admitted she failed to pick him out of a lineup when she went to the county jail.
Bosco. I just have to say that.
From Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bosco. But this is interesting, right? You've got a witness who says, okay, this is the guy who left town. But when put to the test of picking him out of a lineup, she couldn't do it.
Which kind of contradicts.
Well, at the very least, it hurts your credibility, right, as a witness. By November 1931, Irimendi was cleared of all suspicion and was deported to Spain. In July 1932, 16-year-old Andrew Nemes Jr., a farm worker, told the police he saw his friend Steve Lecco kill the Germond family. He recanted his statement that same day when he was questioned by the DA.
It's such a strange thing to go and tell somebody that, yeah, I saw my friend do it. He did it. I watched it. And then later say, yeah, I was wrong. That really didn't happen. I don't know why I told you that.
And I don't know why people do that. Maybe they got into a fight. Maybe he was mad at him and he thought this was a way to get back at him. In the fall of 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was governor of New York at the time, ordered the case to be reopened. Residents were dissatisfied with how the local police were conducting the investigation. DA John R. Schwartz was running for re-election at that time and believed Roosevelt's decision was politically motivated.
Really? You think politicians make decisions based on politics?
Yeah, shocking. In December 1932, Roosevelt returned the case to the county with a statement that the mystery had been dissolved based on a new confession by Nemes, who said his recantation was incorrect. I mean, this guy's all over the map. He tells the story, he recants, and now he's flip-flopping again.
He's 16 years old. Maybe he's just not sure.
And we don't know what his state of mind is. We really don't. A few months later, on March 8th, 1933, Andrew Nemes once again said his confession was false.
I mean, as a defense attorney, you're like, how can you even take this kid's statements for anything? He's wishy-washy.
Well, especially if you have nothing else to back it up.
You like my little wishy-washy, didn't you?
Yeah. The following day, March 9th, 1933, 56-year-old Arthur Curry, the Germond's neighbor, was charged with the first-degree murder of 10-year-old Raymond. According to the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, authorities established that Raymond was the second person killed. But the paper didn't explain why Curry was charged with his specific murder.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Well, I mean, common sense would make you believe that if he killed Raymond, he killed the other three family members as well. Or at the very least was involved.
Yeah, was one of the killers.
It's not like he killed Raymond and then somebody completely unconnected came in and killed the other three family members.
Right.
That would be absurd. Curry had been held in jail as a material witness in the murder case since February 18th. After Andrew Nemes recanted his confession, the sheriff told the DA he wanted a first-degree murder warrant for Curry because he was about to be released on a writ of habeas corpus. According to the arrest affidavit, Curry rented his pasturage to Houston Germond for $30 a year, and that rent was due around the time of the murder.
So they're thinking he was owed $30. And if he wasn't going to get his money,
he was going to kill the whole family. $30.
But yet we know that Houston had probably $100 in his wallet.
And most likely the killer took off with it.
Yeah.
According to the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, Curry was originally from Canada. He had been living in Dutchess County for about 12 years. Before that, he lived in White Plains and Yonkers, New York. He was active in school and civic affairs in Stanfordville. His home was a meeting place for hunters. As mentioned, his farm adjoined the pasture of the Germond farm. Curry had a variety of jobs. He was a chicken farmer, roadhouse operator, part-time barber, former deputy sheriff, and allegedly a small-time bootlegger. I kind of believe a lot of people were maybe small-time bootleggers back then.
I know my grandpa was.
According to the magazine Modern Farmer, Curry had served time for assault and was known for his explosive temper.
I mean, this is the same guy that cut Bernice's hair. He was one of the first people to arrive at the scene when the bodies were discovered. Not saying that means he's innocent, because we know a lot of times the guilty like to be at the scene.
Yeah, insert themselves or show back up at the scene. And there's no doubt he was, very familiar with the family, right? He's a neighbor. He cut Bernice's hair. He knew them all. His arrest came at the conclusion of an investigation by the Dutchess County Sheriff and the Pinkerton Detective Agency.
The old Pinkerton Agency.
Yeah, in all the movies, that's the agency you do not want to mess with you. Or that you don't want to mess with. You don't want to have them after you.
They were like the top echelon.
Best of the best.
Yes.
The sheriff secured the warrant for his arrest with affidavits signed by Curry's common-law wife, Mary Curry, gas station operator Raymond Buys, and Jeanette Coffin, who lived in the Germond farmhouse in 1933. However, per the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, none of the affidavits indicated the police had direct evidence linking Curry to the murders. So I don't know what they said in these affidavits. It's like, what could they have said that would have led to his arrest, knowing that there was no direct evidence linking him to the murders?
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for neighbors not to like each other. Is that a reason to be arrested for murder? I don't think so.
According to Curry's testimony at the coroner's inquest, the last time he saw the family was a week before the murders. He claimed that it had been 2 or 3 months since he had seen Bernice, and he was not on the property on the day of the murders. He was at home between 4 and 7 p.m. on November 26, 1930, the relevant time frame for the murders. He claimed that gas station attendant Raymond Buys stopped at his house around 5:45 for a haircut. The next time he saw the family was when he saw the bodies. However, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, the Poughkeepsie Eagle News reported in November 1930 that Arthur Curry told the police he saw Bernice several days before the murders when he gave her a haircut. This conflicting information was not mentioned in the 1933 article detailing his arrest. And that's a pretty big discrepancy.
It is. It's conflicting here, but it's also conflicting because we know Bernice got off the bus the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so, was she home a few days before that? Went back to school and then came back? Yeah, it was a little strange, the timing of it. According to Mary Curry's affidavit, Arthur left the house around 3:30 p.m. on November 26th to take care of his horses. He returned around 4 p.m. He told Mary he was going to the Germond farm to collect the $30 rent he was owed. She saw her husband about 10 minutes before Joseph Buys came to the house for a haircut. They finished dinner after Buys went home and went to bed early that night. The next day, they had Thanksgiving dinner around 2 p.m. Two of their guests went out hunting afterwards, but she didn't remember if her husband went with them.
Well, up to this point, I don't see where he would have had an opportunity to kill 4 people. Yeah, he went over to the house to collect $30, but based on her timeline, he wasn't gone that long.
And he wasn't gone during the time that it was thought the murders occurred, right? If Joseph Buys comes around the house at 5:45 for a haircut and Arthur Curry is home at that point, that's prior to Bernice getting off the bus.
Right.
So if Mary is correct and her husband was home the rest of the night, I don't know. I'm not seeing the hole there.
Yeah, you'd have to change the whole concept and say, well, maybe he went over there and killed 3 people quickly. And you'd have to say that he saw Bernice get off the bus. But how could he do that if he's busy cutting somebody's hair?
Now, you could take it into the next day, right? Thanksgiving Day. But she doesn't have him leaving. She has, them eating Thanksgiving dinner around 2. She said after that, some guests went out hunting, but she's not sure if her husband went with them. The day after Thanksgiving, 2 men showed up to their house and told Mary something terrible happened to the Germonds and they needed help. She assumed it was some kind of accident. Arthur Curry walked into the house at that moment and asked Mary to call Dr. H.A. Richardson. Arthur returned a half hour later and said the family had been stabbed. They talked that afternoon, and Arthur said to her, "We know where we were. Buys came in 5:45, and he left 6:15. And while we were eating supper, the bus passed, and I went out to see. I thought it was someone coming into the house. I went out to see who it was." Mary told him he must have been the last one to see the family, to which he replied, "I guess you're right, Mary. I must have been."
Kind of strange things to say.
Yeah, it kind of leaves you with the impression that he's trying to confirm his alibi with her.
Yeah, kind of like, hey, now remember, this was the time that we did this till this time.
A couple days after the murders, Mary asked her husband for some money, and he told her he didn't have any because he didn't get his rent when he went to the Germond house, and he would have to wait until the estate was settled. He told Mary he believed the murders occurred shortly after he left the Germond property, and he asked her to say he was home that evening, specifically around 5:45 p.m.
Maybe he was just worried that somehow, because he knew he was over there, that maybe somebody would try to blame him for the murders, and he just wanted to make sure that that couldn't happen.
Or maybe he committed the murders and he's wanting his wife to...
CYA?
Yeah. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Mary said in her affidavit, "The reason I made statements that I did in the beginning was through fear of Mr. Curry. The statements and facts contained in this affidavit, which I am now making, are the truth." Witness Jeanette Coffin wrote that around 4:40 p.m. on the afternoon of the murders, she saw a stranger in the Germond barnyard who resembled Arthur Curry, but she wasn't fully confident in her identification. In his affidavit, Joseph Buys described his visit to the Curry home on November 26th and said Curry later tried to impress upon him that the time of his visit was around the time of the murders and not at the time Buys said he was there.
See, that's a problem when you're constantly trying to tell people that, "Now don't forget, you were here at this time to this time." And they say, "Well, no, actually I was here at this time." No, you have it wrong.
Yeah.
This is the time that you got here. We fed you, and then you left it this time.
Well, obviously, at the very least, right? This guy is looking very suspicious. You can understand why police would think so now, after we've gone through what was said in the affidavits, after we've talked about him trying to basically cajole all of these different people into saying he was at a certain place at a certain time, or they were at a certain place at a certain time.
I mean, for the wife to say in her statement that she's now telling the truth because she can, but she originally was in fear of her husband.
That might tell you something.
Yeah.
Would you be in fear of someone who you believed killed a family of 4?
Yeah, it'd be hard to lay down next to him at nighttime.
After the arrest, Mary Curry asked for police protection out of fear for her husband.
Probably needed it.
She felt like it for sure. On April 3rd, 1933, the Supreme Court sustained Arthur Curry's writ of habeas corpus and freed him from jail. The justice who reviewed the case said there was too much suspicion and too little evidence to uphold the charges.
I get that.
I get that too. I mean, this guy doesn't look good, but when it comes to cold hard evidence, how much, is there really? Captain Daniel Fox of the Pinkerton agency said he didn't believe there was sufficient evidence for a conviction, and Sheriff Oakley Cookingham was called back to the stand and asked if he thought a jury would convict Curry. Cookingham said that was up to the jury to decide.
No, that's a pass-off answer.
The justice responded, as quoted by the Poughkeepsie Eagle News, all this testimony is negative. The case is lacking in motive. It's lacking in proof. There are none of the attendant circumstances that usually occur in this kind of crime. There are no conclusions on the part of the defendant. What could a judge do with this case? Even if you had a confession, there's nothing to corroborate it. A lot of men would not be safe if we could go on such evidence as this.
Well, that's a good statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful statement. Basically what the judge is saying is that you could convict anyone if this is the type of evidence that warranted a conviction. You could basically just pick anyone that was known to the victim or had any dealings with them and say, okay, we're going to charge you.
Right.
And you could get a conviction. The judge believed no jury would convict Curry, and if they did, his conviction would not be sustained on appeal. After the judge made the decision to dismiss Curry, the DA stood up and said, my position in the matter has always been similar to what you have just said, but for me to come out frankly and state there wasn't sufficient evidence would have resulted in cries that I, as district attorney, was bucking the due process of the law. I thought I better let someone higher up express that feeling. And I kind of talked about this on our True Crime All the Time episode this week. You kind of hear this prosecutor saying, I didn't feel going into this that we had enough evidence to get a conviction, but it felt like if I didn't go forward with it, I was going to be persecuted by the public. Well, that's not how you should make your decisions on whether or not you're going to prosecute.
No, you're just passing the buck upstream.
And he basically just admitted it.
Yeah.
He said, I figured I was just better off letting someone higher up the chain make the decision.
Yeah, I'll let you make the decision. I don't want to be held accountable for that decision.
During his earlier testimony, Sheriff Oakley Cookingham testified that their investigation showed the murders were the act of a quick-tempered man after an argument. He believed Curry wanted Houston Germond's land for hunting privileges, which was allegedly the cause of the argument, but the sheriff had no evidence to prove that argument ever took place. And it's really tough, right? It's like the sheriff is saying, well, here's what I think happened. I have no evidence to back that up. It's just my theory. That is not enough to convict someone.
No.
Captain Fox from the Pinkerton agency testified that Curry told him He wanted to be convicted of first-degree murder and wouldn't accept a jury verdict of second-degree murder. Captain Fox added, his actions, even when he was a witness, showed evidence of guilt.
Why would he say that?
I don't know. That would make no sense.
Unless he's saying, if you're going to take me to court, you better be able to get a first-degree conviction, and I don't think you can because I didn't do it.
Or maybe he thought, if I'm going to be convicted of anything, I just want to die.
Well, there you go.
Mary Curry testified that her husband left home on the afternoon of the murders and returned at 6:30 p.m. He coached her on what to say to the police. He wanted her to say he was home at 5:45 p.m., but he wasn't. She did acknowledge that he came home unruffled, with no blood on him or signs of injury. 2 or 3 days later, he said he was the last to see the family alive. Okay, so you've got some things there. You know, if he got home at 6:30, could he have killed all four after Bernice got off the bus? It would be a tight window.
It would be. But
possibly doable. The one thought that I do have, though, is to stab the family almost 30 times. Be pretty tough to stroll home unruffled with no blood on you.
Yeah, pretty difficult. Almost impossible.
Mary testified that he was violent at times and had a temper, and he told her shortly before the preliminary hearing, "You're driving me crazy. I would have blown my head off 3 days after the Germond murders, only they would have thought I was guilty of them."
Interesting statement.
Yeah, I don't know what you make of it, but it's strange. A Stanfordville merchant testified that when speaking to Curry a few days after the murders, Curry said, "I'm afraid I am up against an awful thing." Curry also said about Bernice Germond, she was a hot little girl. Okay, that's creepy.
It is creepy
to say. Although Curry did behave suspiciously after the murders, the evidence wasn't strong enough to send him to trial. The day after the hearing, Curry and his wife returned to their home in Stanfordville, despite the fact that Mary was a principal witness against him. And that is strange.
Wonder how that went.
I don't know. You know, it did say she was his common law wife. You know, there are a lot of things that tear relationships apart. Someone testifying against you in a murder trial might be up there.
It'd be difficult to be with that person for the rest of your life. On both sides. I think he's probably thinking, you betrayed me. And she's probably thinking,
you're a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Later that month, Curry filed a lawsuit against the sheriff and the Pinkerton's National Detective Agency seeking $150,000 in damages. The suit alleged that the defendants conspired to illegally arrest and imprison him. Okay, can we talk about $150,000 in the 1930s?
Well, that's a lot of money.
How much do you think that would be today? Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop.
I would say that's like 2.3 million.
Okay. All right. I don't hate it.
Yeah, it's not a bad payday.
No, I don't hate your attempt at the conversion. He claimed he was invited to the sheriff's apartment and then compelled by force to go to the county jail, where he was imprisoned and interrogated about the murders. He was released and arrested again as a material witness. In July 1934, a Supreme Court jury issued a verdict of no cause of action in Curry's suit. Arthur Curry died on January 2nd, 1955. After a long illness, the Germond case has been cold for decades. No new suspects have been named by investigators. In 2019, Dr. Vincent Cookingham published The Germond Family Murders, a forensic conclusion to a cold case. Cookingham has over 5 decades of experience as a law enforcement officer and university professor of forensic science. Based on his research into the case, he concluded that Arthur Curry remains the most probable offender.
I wonder if that was his great-grandfather, Oakley.
I'm sure it was. But, you know, as we wrap this one up, Gibbs, you know, just look at that statement. Arthur Curry remains the most probable offender. Okay, I would agree with that statement. I would take it a step further and say I think there's a good chance he might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
But there is a big difference between being innocent and being not guilty, or having had something to do with it, but not having enough evidence for a jury to convict you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you.
Doesn't mean he didn't do it. To me, it just means there wasn't enough there to prove to a jury that he did.
I mean, it is strange that he tried to tell his wife and others what time he was at the house for dinner versus what they recall.
Yeah, all that's strange. Now, you could make the argument that he thought, being one of the last people, maybe the last people to see them alive, aside from the murderer, that he was just a little scared.
Yeah.
That he was going to be looked at, and he just wanted to kind of head all that off. Now, you can go the other route and say he knew he did it, and he needed these people to, kind of save him.
I still think you're left with that. How did he overcome, if he did it, how did he overcome not getting blood on him?
Yeah. And again, even by Mary's statement, it would have had to have been a pretty short window from the time that, Bernice got off the bus to murder everyone and to get home. Now, it didn't say for sure that he came back in the same clothes he left in, but the thought is that he did, or that would have been probably made a bigger deal.
Sure.
And to have no blood on you whatsoever, like you said, it's pretty much impossible to stab 4 people 23 times.
That's a lot of blood splatter.
Yeah, there's going to be spatter, spurt, all those types of things. Some of that, a lot of that is going to hit you.
Yeah.
But because this case is almost 100 years old, and most of the people involved are long dead, the main suspect has been dead for 70 years.
Yeah, quite a while.
By my way of thinking, it seems very unlikely that the Germond family murders will ever be solved. It's not like they have anything, that they're going to be able to test for DNA.
Right.
Or something like that and do some kind of genetic genealogy. I just don't see this case, breaking that way. So, but it is a fascinating case because you do know some of the timelines, and you have this suspect who I think police thought pretty highly of as the murderer. But as, the justice said, no jury in the world would convict this guy on the evidence you have.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking of the Sheriff Oakley there throughout time. The stories about this case he would have told his kids and grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
And then what his kids and grandkids would have told theirs. I'm sure in that time, all those stories, they probably said, it was this guy. We know it was him, but we couldn't really prove it to get the conviction, but we know it was him.
I'm sure there are a lot of unsolved cases like that.
Yeah.
That if police were being honest, which they can't do, they can't come out and say, hey, we know it's this person.
Right.
But if they were being honest in a one-on-one situation, a lot of the times they would say, we know for a fact it's this person, but we don't have enough evidence to charge them, let alone take them to trial and put them up in front of a jury. We'll never get a conviction.
But we know they did it.
Yeah. Yep. But that's it for our episode on the Germond family murders. We got a voicemail. Do you want to hear it?
Let's hear that voicemail.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Craig in San Diego, or as you guys might like to call it, Santiago. I just wanted to let you guys know I love the podcast. I first was going through all the original true crime all the time, but now I'm getting into the Unsolved as I caught up all the way. But I just got done listening to the Joseph Smedley case, and it's just crazy that, like you guys said, that they didn't investigate so much, it seemed like. And I don't know, like maybe one of the fraternity brothers had something to do with it, like you guys say, or the frat. Sorry. I was also thinking like the cops like didn't look too much into it, so I don't know. Maybe one of the police kids was in that same frat or something, and they shut it down because they knew some inside information and they didn't want to release any details. But who knows? But it's just crazy. You think they would have some kind of evidence, like on the rocks that were picked up or his backpack? There was no fingerprints or anything. Anyways, hopefully they open that case back up because it does seem pretty weird if they don't have any more evidence. But yeah, love what you guys do. Keep it up and keep your own time ticking.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail. I will say, Gibbs, that case is one of the stranger ones that we've done in quite a long time.
It really is.
I mean, you can go a couple of different routes with it, but I've gotten a number of emails from people who just can't believe that case kind of ended up the way it did.
Yeah.
But maybe they will look into it more. They'll figure something out. There's just got to be something there.
Yep. Hopefully they do.
That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Stream all the movies and shows you love for free on Pluto TV.
Say what now? Showtime.
That means drama is free with heart-wrenching stories from Love and Basketball, Power, and Greenleaf.
In this family, we live by the Spirit.
And laughter is free with gut-busting comedies like Key and Peele, The Neighborhood, Everybody Hates Chris, and Boomerang. Watch all the hits, all for free, from all your favorite devices.
Oh my God, I love it!
Feel the free Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.